Thank you very much for the introduction. Yep, I thought I'd put FRAS just to make it look like I do blend in. A bit of background. So Bodmin Moor was given international dark sky status back in 2017, pre-COVID. The accolade is awarded by Dark Sky International. It used to be called the International Dark Sky Association, but they've rebranded with a new logo. I'll show you what it is. They're based in Tucson in the USA. Actually, when it came to designation of Bodmin Moor, they're used to giving designations to national parks. But Bodmin Moor is not a national park. It's an area of outstanding natural beauty. So they had to create a new designation specifically for Bodmin Moor, which is why this word landscape now comes in, because it used to be park or reserve, but you will see landscape being used. So it's for those places that don't quite fit with being parks. So a bit about Dark Sky International. So they're an organisation which is now also, we have a subsection within the UK. There are probably ones elsewhere in the world where the intention is that we try and restore the nighttime environment, protecting communities, ideally from the harmful effects of light pollution. And I think we're becoming more aware of the adverse effects of light pollution over time. So how do we do that? We do it through advocacy, outreach, and we also tap into this whole idea of conservation in its broadest sense. Across the world, there are, as you can see, 160,000 square kilometres of protected land, which has this designation. 22 countries, 6 continents. There are 19 dark sky places in the UK, 8 are in England, and 2 are in Cornwall. So there's one in Bodmin Moor, there's one in West Penwith, closest one here, Exmoor, there's a couple in Wales. We've got South Downs, we've got Galloway, Northumberland, there's Sark, and they are cropping up all over, which is great. I should say what a delegate is. We talked about advocacy. Advocacy is where people are helping to spread the word, if you like, of Dark Sky International with all of its ethos. But there are delegates. I'm the delegate for Cornwall, and I communicate with my colleagues in Dark Sky International based within the UK. And so we have our own chapter, if you like. That's the way that the Americans would like us to describe it. Hosted by Dark Sky UK. The website, we do have a website. It's being built up at the moment. We learn from each other. We do a bit of lobbying as well if we can. And I'll tell you how we do that shortly. So that's the, I've just basically taken a screenshot from my iPhone, but Dark Sky UK, so our own little logo, and you can find out about us, join us. So what do we do as these dark sky places then? How does somebody like me fit into that? Well, part of that is to provide the education and outreach that goes alongside of it. So as part of that, we will regularly provide outreach events. So we do try, we don't charge. All of what we do is completely free. There might be donations taken by the host. So for example, we do a lot of our work at Sibleyback, which is part of Southwest Lakes Trust. So they host us and they do all the organisation, which is great. They will accept donations and then we provide the events for free. We can't do anything about the weather, but, you know, even on the cloudy nights and the rainy nights, we will try and at least do something. So we use all of the things that we have at our disposal to try and help to show people the beauty of the night sky. So that would be through telescopes, we use naked eye, binoculars, whatever we can to show people how beautiful the skies are, particularly from dark sky places. The Bodmin Moor, most of the moor is Bortle 3, which Bortle 3, for those who don't know, 1 is amazing, and then it goes down to a sort of 7. 7 is the centre of Plymouth. And 1 is somewhere like the North Cornwall coast or the Isles of Scilly or somewhere where it is truly dark. And as part of that, we help to educate people about what light pollution is, what it means to them and how they can help. And so that ties in. We use effectively something which is easy to get hold of, the beauty of the night sky, and that helps to get across this message. So the Bodmin Moor group is provided by Carradine Observatory. I don't have B squared FH, I've got M squared KW, so I've got 2 mics who are both here in the audience, and together, collectively, we provide the outreach services. Now, if you know anything about light pollution, you'll know it's pretty bad, and it's getting worse year on year. And there is nothing more frustrating knowing that something is bad, knowing that something we can do something about, and yet it just seems to fall on deaf ears. And it is so frustrating. But we can't sit back and be frustrated. We have to do something about it. So we have data, CPRE 2023. They're not doing one this year, something to do with an election. They did one last year. They want to do a bit more lobbying, so they don't want to miss time in collecting data. They want to make sure that their message is heard through lobbying, so that's why they said not this year. But the survey showed that over 75% of participants were affected by light pollution. So it's affecting vast waves of the UK. In Oxfordshire, I just picked out one area, about 55%, over half the people who participated in the survey, the level of light pollution that they are suffering is regarded as severe. In other words, they can maybe see a few stars in the sky, but that's pretty much it. And we also know that most of the light that is being used to try and light up the areas that we need to see, about a third of that is pretty wasted. And that's not just wasted light affecting us, but that's wasted energy and expenditure too. So here's a picture that I've taken from the CPRE. I think this is 2016. So it is worse than this, but you can see Bodmin Moor. I've highlighted it there. We're on the southeastern edge. So you can see the darker it is, the darker it is. Whereas I've missed off Exeter. Don't think you're any better than Plymouth. You're not. There's Plymouth, that blight there. And then you've got Truro down here, and then Newquay, and right down there, that's West Penwith, right at the sort of toe bit of Cornwall. So it's pretty dark. So how bad is light pollution? Well, it's a talk in itself, and I'm not going to go into it in any great detail other than to say we know it does have effects on wildlife. You only need to see the swarms of moths around a street lamp to know that that is the case. It affects bird migration, and most of the things that we are learning about light at night, it's bad for our wildlife. We also know that it does have effects on human health. The difficulty being a physician, I can understand this in some degree, but there's so many confounding variables that you have to try and incorporate into the data that you receive. But we know that if you spend your days, nights altering purpose, so you overnight workers, we know that they have an increase in the risk of cancers, for example. Certain cancers can occur. We know that there are mood disturbances, obesity, diabetes, heart disease. The evidence is beginning to stack up. And it's beginning to stack up. And even if you don't agree that it is all due to adverse light at night, we should say, well, even if it is a little bit, we know that we can do something about this, so why don't we try and do something about this? Climate change, it goes without saying, if we're using energy and it's not going in the right place, that's not good. Let's not do that. The financial losses and I'll come on to this in a minute on the next slide, but Cornwall, for example, said, OK, we were about to spend £1.3 million of energy on lighting. So should we not do that then? And they turned off the lights between midnight and 5 o'clock in the morning, and it will save them some money. There has been some comeback, but ultimately it's about saying, OK, we've got a pot of cash. Is there anything that we can do which is low risk and save some money in the process? Of course, light pollution is bad for the visual astronomers, but there are places in the world where that isn't the case, where there is very little light pollution, but those places are beginning to get smaller and smaller and smaller now. You know that, and I know that. And collectively, we've got some powerful voices, so we should start spreading that message, because people will collectively, over time, with enough momentum, they will start to listen. And there are definitely social inequalities, the things which you might not automatically think about. You imagine in Tower Hamlets, it's in London, being lit up like a Christmas tree the entire time, because the basis of the assumption is that area is a high crime area. So why not flood it with light? Well, that's a social inequality that we do not need. It's saying something which is different to suburbia. And it's not good. So turning off the light, surely it's a no-brainer. Well, on the left, we've got street lights in Cornwall to be switched or turned off or dimmed. Well, hey, that's nice. But look at the right. Fear's shopping area will be plunged into darkness. Now, even if people have got the time to read the balanced arguments afterwards, it's the message. We live by sound bites. That message does not sound good. This is Birmingham. It was only a few days ago, and they wanted to turn off the lights to save some money, and that's the headline. It's not helpful. Again, The Guardian, concern. Now, in that article, it does talk about the conflicting evidence about crime. Some say you can reduce crime by lighting up areas. Others say, no, that's not the case. We've got evidence that says it doesn't alter crime rates. They talk about the wildlife benefits. They have an expert talking about wildlife benefits. But the word concern is the first word they use. And it's not helpful. So, as traditionally silent voices, the advocates, we need to share our opinions. So we did. So with the House of Lords, there was a House of Lords Science and Technologies Council, Science and Technology Committee that looked into the adverse effects of light and noise and produced quite an extensive document. And it was fantastic that they collected lots of data, lots of opinion from experts within the fields. But ultimately, although there was an acceptance of the report, the recommendation for research programme was actually rejected by the government, which is, broadly pretty disappointing. We've got some great experts locally. So Professor Gaston, who's based here and at down southwest in Cornwall, about the marine laboratory data, the marine laboratory work, and all of these things are pointing towards an adverse effect of light pollution on the environment. And that, I don't think it's a great photo, but that's Starlink. So that's probably more a problem for these big survey telescopes, I would imagine. I mean, they're a problem for us with our big wide field imaging, so I'd imagine that the big survey telescopes, these are a problem, and the more that they go unchecked, the bigger the problem is going to be. And especially when you take that next step to producing, say, these big sails in space that could reflect vast quantities of photons back down towards the Earth, that would be a bad thing. So what are we going to do? So the old mantra then, education, education, education. Share the beauty of the night sky and try and treasure these dark sky places, but actually make them special but achievable, something that you don't just go to, that actually you look to where you are now and say, do you know what, we can do something about this. We can lobby as a group and say it's okay to maybe think about dimming those lights. I've had lots of conversations with Plymouth, for example, and we're working together, and they were already on the programme, to be fair. The switching down the intensity of the light, making the lights cooler, not so harsh and blue and white, a bit yellower. Not that people would notice, because if you do it gradually, they don't notice. If you do it like that, they do. So just turn them down a little bit, and nobody notices. Embrace new ideas, encourage all ages to get involved, and leave no one behind. Space and everything up there is accessible to all. And so we encourage that as much as we can. So, Bodmin, I like the fact that the sign got billing below the pick up the poo. But there it is. We've got one. We're putting one in Sibley as well. It's not there yet, but in the background you've got router, which looks like rough tor, but it's router. And then beyond that, you've got Bron Winilly, or as you lot call it, Brown Willie. And beautiful there, beautiful there. This is in the Router car park. So there's a sign there saying, welcome to Bodmin Moor International Dark Sky Landscape. This is from one of our meetings. Mike, I can see your hair just below the sun there. That isn't projecting very well, but there's about 100 people there. We sent out this thing, it was in April, a couple of years ago, and we didn't sort of do a check on the numbers, and I think about 140 people turned up, which is quite something. That shows you, I mean, the sun was setting. I thought this is going to be a lovely night. It was an absolute corker. There is the Dobsonian, which is one of the ones which you have to lay flat. It then can find things, but you have to move it around, so it's semi-go-to. And typically, when you've got all these people around, there it was, all of a sudden, the motors decided to stop working, which any amateur astronomer in the room will know that is guaranteed to happen, related to the number of people that are there watching you. So thankfully, bit of old school, I star hopped. It's relatively easy to star hop from the plough to find the Whirlpool Galaxy. So the motors were still trying to go, ramming it out of the way. Come on, you're going to do this. And it did. And eventually I managed to, that's one of our own photographs, but we managed to show pretty much all of the attendees the Whirlpool Galaxy, which was just brilliant. The number of, oh, I can actually see it. You can just about, with the naked eye, through a 12-inch, you can see the aggregation of the main galaxy, and then the little tiny one, which is going to be eaten up, I presume, at some stage. You can just see a little dot below it, but most people were able to see it. And then we've got a Schmidt-Cassegrain, which is a 10-inch. We couldn't see, that's our picture of Mars. I love that picture because that's got a cloud over Olympus Mons, that little white area. You can see that's Mike's image, by the way. He's there. You can see the poles, but you can also see a cloud over the largest volcano in the solar system. So awesome, eh? All from Cornwall. This is us setting up. Nemo, the poodle, wasn't very helpful. But that's my son. And he's got one of these Altaz telescopes that you put your iPhone in, and it's got the thing which tells you where it is, And he's been able to see Uranus, Neptune, lots of different things through this technology. And that's the next thing. It's about embracing the technologies that we have to make it easier for people like me to be able to show assembled people the beauty of the night sky. But also the technology in its own right being something which is pretty darn cool. So that's all of the telescope setup. As the night comes along, yeah, you can tell it's going to be a good one, and indeed it is. If you pick great nights there, the fact that there is no light pollution, I think that's showing you there is no light pollution there. There's a little bit from sort of Bodmin and even further away, Liscard and Plymouth, but it's pretty good. We like our attendees to get involved. You can't see some pillock around the side there doing a bit of that. Photo bombing, that's me. I didn't realise at the time Mike was taking a photo, and I kind of was wandering around. Anyway, and also you can't see the plough because it's too bright in here, but the plough is off to the right there. Trust me, it is. And some more, we encourage all. Bring your dogs, come along. Dog wasn't keen to look down the telescope, but the owners were, and Dog said that's okay. This is from Bodmin Moor. This is King Arthur's Hall, which is a lovely place. It is literally in the middle of nowhere. We don't know what it is. I think there was an excavation when we went there last year. Was it last year, Mike? Yeah. When we went there was an excavation, and hopefully some of the information from the excavation will come out very soon. But as one of the events, they said, why don't you, it might be astronomically based, this thing. And it absolutely is. When you get there, if you're an astronomer, you know immediately the whole thing is lined up north to south. Absolutely dead straight. And I'm thinking, that's interesting. So there I am, and with our telescopes, with Mike, you can see my truck in the background. You can see the white thing of the telescope just there, and I'm kind of there taking some photos. But when it's cloudy, which it is, Mike is there showing, again, it's not projected very well. That blob is, anybody know what it is? Yay! You can see it. Yeah, that's the Orion Nebula and the Running Man to the left. If you can see it live, well, I think I might have it, maybe not. It's an incredible image. Here is Mike at Jamaica Inn. And yeah, that does show quite well. We've got this thing called Magic Planet. I say we. Mike's got this thing called Magic Planet, which the kids absolutely love because it's got this lens inside which projects the image on the inside of the globe, so we can show the topography of all of the planets, the sun, the moons around Jupiter, and it makes it much more tangible. When they see that, they then come out and we can show them Jupiter with the moons going around Jupiter, and they've already seen it on Magic Planet. So it's lovely when they go, oh, wow. We do try and get along. This is me. I went to a science fair. You can't see it, but I'm holding a meteorite there. My main passion in medicine, if you like, my research area in medicine is in iron. So I like to kind of link the two things together. So I talked about the formation of iron and how iron is used biologically. So I thought that's pretty cool. This chap was talking to me about going to medicine, but also talking about science in general, which is great. I love that bit. I love being able to try at least do my little bit to inspire the next generation, if I can. No astronomer's talk would be complete without some images, so let's have some, shall we? This is Mike's 360 from where we live. You can't. To the 3 o'clock point, that's where the domes are. That's Mike's house. That's my house with the lights on. I know, bad. The red glow is Carradon Mast, and that thing going across from 2 o'clock down to about 8 o'clock, that's the Milky Way. No major processing there to show it. That's what it really does look like. I'm really sorry, that doesn't show at all well. It looks brilliant on here, but not so good on there.
Could you try killing some of the lights, do you think?
Because if you show this one, it'll be cool.
I mean, yeah, that's... No?
Nope, that made it worse.
What about...
Other way.
Other door.
Hey, ready?
Hold it down.
Look at that. Woo. This is Mike's image again. This is wide field, and you can see the core of the Milky Way. So if you're very lucky, you can see. Is that the Lagoon Nebula, Mike? That.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's just visible.
and then you've got the rift of the Milky Way going up. You've got a little bit of light pollution there from this guard, and you've got the Mars to the right. But you can see right down to the horizon. And so that's what it's like when you're in somewhere where light pollution is not a major feature. When you look up at the night sky, just with an open camera, that's the kind of thing. I've got a better image of the North America Nebula in a minute. We even get the aurora. So these are recent images. You can see the red glow, both near the horizon, and you can see the plough just off to the right there, and Polaris there. These are from the Hurler Stones, which is a site on Bodmin Moor. We don't know what the significance was, but they've been there for quite a few thousand years. You can literally get to it from a car park. It's very dark, lovely there, absolutely beautiful place to go and visit. My son that I showed you earlier took these photos with an unmodified camera. So again, of one of the Hurler Stones, and that's Sibley back looking across the lake. And occasionally, Mike took this one, occasionally you get to see, this is my telescope imaging something, but you can see one meteor, and then you see another one just above it, just to the right there. So in a dark sky, you're going to see these things much more readily. Mike's image of the Andromeda Galaxy, to 2.25, 2.3 million light years away. Heart and Soul Nebula. I think it should be the Heart and Fetus Nebula, but meh. And occasionally, something comes along which is going to be more accessible. So the Jupiter, the planets, even when it's a little bit cloudy, you can see the planets through the telescope. You can see the bands, you can certainly see the moons going around. And if you come back a little bit later, you can actually perceive the moons moving, that they've moved, and people, oh, what's that star? No, they're not stars, they're moons around the planet. Occasionally you can see the great red spot, and it's great when you can see it, and we've got an app that can predict it. And sometimes when you get a shadow transit, that is pretty cool too. That one, I'm sorry, it was another picture of Jupiter that we had. This is Comet Neowise that Mike took from Carradon Hill. We can capture images of the moon. And again, even simply looking down the telescope at the moon can be something that attendees have never done before. And they can see the craters. And what's that one called? Oh. Hang on a minute. I don't know. But, you can talk. There are some key ones which you kind of keep up here. So I'd know about Sinus Iridium, the Bay of Rainbows, Tranquility Base, and all of that kind of area. I know about those to a certain extent, but I'm not a lunatic. I probably am, but there you go. The North American Nebula. The thing about these are lovely images, but they take time to acquire. And I think sometimes that we are guilty of showing people these beautiful images, and then when they want to see it with their own eyes, that's when the disappointment comes along. Because you're never going to see this with your own eyes unless you're looking down something which has got a mirror about 5 metres across, I would imagine. And even then, it's going to be technically challenging because there are no eyepieces on those things. But it's great when we can show people, but I think people still want to see things with their own eyes. This is the California Nebula, again taken by Mike. The Rosette Nebula, all beautiful images. And these images allow us to talk about how they got there, what they do, how big they are, and relate it to what's happening with our own sun over time that might happen. So, for example, the white dwarf phenomena in billions of years of time, so we can show them planetary nebulae, etc. And if you can show them iconic things with the telescope that they're looking at, that can be helpful too. But ultimately, the astrophotography that we do takes time. This is a 7.5-hour image of Bode's galaxy through the 8-inch telescope. How am I doing for time? Am I doing all right? We're just commissioning a new one. This is our Ritchie Chrétien, which is 14 inches across, based on a heavy-duty mount. But again, it takes time to take these images. It's not very easy to do outreach with such things. I can show beautiful images, but I really want to show people what things look like. So this is where new technology comes in. You would have spotted my prop at the front. This is C-Star. C-Star has got a 50mm lens at the front. It does literally everything. So I just press a button, it'll know where it is in the sky. I use my iPhone or my iPad, and it will constantly update images over 10 seconds and stack those images, and I'll be able to see them developing on the iPad or the iPhone, which means I can talk. Mike and I can talk. We can talk about what they're seeing at the same time as those images coming along. And that's great because it's showing them the telescope that's getting the images, as well as being able to understand what those things mean. And these are two pictures taken from, you can't, again, on the screen, it is still too dark, but there's the Horsehead Nebula in there. But this is the Orion Nebula with this little thing. Over about 20 minutes. Within about 10 minutes, it was already showing quite considerable detail. More detail than you can see with the naked eye through the bigger telescope. But because they can see it, it's pointing at a certain part of the sky, it feels that more tangible than me showing an image through the bigger telescope. So Lestron have cottoned on to this, but this thing, which has got a 6-inch mirror, is about £4,000, so not this year. Also, in terms of geekiness, I can take detailed measurements of how bright the sky is in terms of light pollution, cloud measurements. So we've got one of those, and we can also take those detailed measurements, and we use these measurements to upload to the Dark Sky International to show how good our skies are, because every year we have to update that information. Similarly, you can use ones which do more data logging. We haven't got one of those. Across the UK, we've got up at Northumberland. It's a good job I don't live here, because this would incorporate two of my absolute fave things. I'm a brewer as well. Home brew and stargazing. Probably not the drinking of the homebrew and then the stargazing, maybe stargazing first, then the drinking of the homebrew, but it ties in with, it's encouraging. Look at all those telescopes. Families to get involved, to come along, to look down telescopes. Brilliant. And that's what I love. I want to see more of this. It's great. In Australia, there's Western Australia, they've got this giant planisphere, which is, the person standing next to it would be about the same height. And so it's made of metal, and you can actually see. So you can stand there, move the planisphere around, and see what's going on over your head. What a brilliant idea. And only a few weeks ago, South Downs held their Dark Skies Festival, which hopefully will have brought more people in to see what it's like from a dark sky. So that, okay, they're seeing some great stuff, but they will also, I hope, remember, oh, we saw that better because it was darker there. And maybe that knowledge will hopefully pass on through, so more people will be feeling they can do something about it. Just a plug, anybody local, Dark Sky Week is 2nd to 8th of April. We're doing something down at Batalic Mine, which is down west. That's not my photo, that's Aaron Jenkins' photo, brilliant photographer based in Cornwall. That's the observatory, where I'll do an online event on the Wednesday, and that's King Arthur's Hall, where we will be on the 4th. and hopefully it'll be nice and clear. So, in the nicest possible sense, I hope the future is dark. We still need to do more, and I do think the time has come where we do need to have a research programme in the UK and in the wider Europe about the impact of light pollution. Because if we don't do that, it's going to be very difficult to convince people there is a problem. But it is, I can't see it as being anything other than a no-brainer. I know I'm in the camp where I would say that, but maybe because of what we do, we should use that to our advantage. The stuff that you do is utterly amazing. It's so cool. Mike said, it totally inspires people. So why don't we use what we've got to our advantage, the knowledge that you've got, to help say to people, it is also okay to talk about this problem of light pollution and how we're going to deal with it. In the same breath as, isn't this research cool and how is it going to help humanity? Because it absolutely will. Both things are to our advantage. And without doubt, tapping into this issue of impact on climate change is definitely something we should do. So thank you very much. I'll stop. Thank you.